So I want you to picture this scenario for a second. There is this massive, it's a huge international manhunt underway.
Right, the stakes are incredibly high.
Exactly. And they are looking for a lone, brown-haired gunman who just pulled off a very high-profile assassination.
A total lone wolf situation, supposedly.
Supposedly, because in the middle of the night, hours after the shooting, a Ring doorbell camera catches the suspect's car just speeding away.
Yeah.
But the driver isn't a brown-haired lone wolf at all.
Not even close.
It's a bald man. And he's not even alone. He is driving with 3 other passengers.
Which completely shatters the narrative.
Right. How does a lone gunman suddenly have a 4-person getaway team that the prosecution just entirely ignores in court?
It's really a dizzying evidentiary landscape.
It really is. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to take you straight into the preliminary hearing of Tyler Robinson.
He's the man accused of the assassination of Charlie Kirk at that Utah Valley University Turning Point USA event.
And to do this, we're pulling directly from the live tracking transcripts and notes of 2 independent online commentators.
Yeah, Carroll and Coleman, they've been monitoring this trial like literally minute by minute.
Which is incredible work on their part. But before we dive into the deep end, let's establish some ground rules for you listening. We know this case is heavily polarized.
Oh, absolutely drowning in intense political narrative.
On both sides.
Yeah.
And there are widespread allegations of bot traffic manipulating public consensus online. So we are not here to take a political stand.
No, not at all. We are not endorsing any specific political worldview today.
Our goal is just to impartially explore the major discrepancies, the physical impossibilities, and the courtroom anomalies that our sources have highlighted in the state's official narrative.
And to really grasp the gravity of those anomalies, you first have to understand the baseline mechanics of a preliminary hearing in the state of Utah.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to make sure I understand the mechanics here.
Sure. So the legal bar here is incredibly low. The state doesn't have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt at this stage.
They just need what? Probable cause?
Exactly. They only have to establish probable cause to convince a judge to take this to a full trial. Furthermore, under Utah's Rule 1102, courts allow what is called reliable hearsay.
Wait, reliable hearsay? Normally, hearsay is a massive red flag in a courtroom, right?
Oh, huge.
Like, you can't just say, well, my buddy told me he saw the guy do it, because the defense can't cross-examine your buddy. How does reliable hearsay change that dynamic?
It changes it drastically. In a standard trial, you're right, the Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to confront your accuser. But under Rule 1102 in a preliminary hearing, a police officer can literally sit on the stand and testify to what an absent witness allegedly told them.
So the witness isn't even in the room.
Right. And the defense cannot cross-examine that original witness. They can only question the officer reciting the story.
That feels like a massive legal loophole.
It allows the state to essentially paint a narrative without subjecting the actual sources of that narrative to immediate, rigorous scrutiny.
Wow. So with the bar set that low and hearsay actually allowed into the record, observers naturally expected a fairly straightforward presentation.
Yeah, the prosecutors even promised a mountain of evidence.
But our sources immediately point out that the foundation of this mountain is it's crumbling. Let's start with the technology, because there is a staggering pattern of digital failures here.
What's fascinating here is that these aren't just, minor tech glitches. We are talking about critical hardware failures occurring at the exact moments of highest evidentiary value.
Like the body camera?
Yes. Let's look at Officer Chris Bagley. He's the first responder who reached the roof of the Losi Center, which the state claims is the sniper perch.
Right.
He testified that his body camera simply died an hour and 44 minutes into his shift.
Wait, hold on. Less than 2 hours into his shift?
Correct. And it died at the precise moment he discovered a red and black screwdriver and the suspect's prone imprint in the gravel on that roof.
That is, come on. The mechanics of modern police body cameras, like the Axon models they use today, make that highly suspect.
Absolutely. These devices are purpose-built to survive a full patrol.
Right. They're engineered with battery lives, specifically intended to record 10 to 14 hours of continuous high-definition video.
So a battery dying at an hour and 44 minutes isn't just bad luck. It's a massive statistical anomaly.
It's like having a state-of-the-art corporate security system that specifically decides to run a mandatory software update at the exact second a team of bank robbers walks through the vault door.
That's a perfect way to put it. You can't help but tilt your head.
But tell me about the actual shooting footage. Surely At a high-profile Turning Point USA event with media everywhere, they have the shot on camera.
They do not.
You're kidding.
I'm not. The prosecution admitted in court that there is absolutely zero video footage of the shooting itself. None.
So what do they show?
What the state presented instead was compiled, grainy surveillance footage of a suspect climbing onto the roof.
Okay, I saw the notes on this compiled video from our sources, and this blew my mind. There is a literal 5-minute jump cut in the footage.
A massive gap.
Yeah, it shows the suspect getting onto the roof. The video just cuts and jumps at 5 minutes, and then it shows the suspect running away.
And that missing 5-minute window is precisely the window where the prosecution claims the suspect assembled a fully disassembled rifle, got into position, and took the shot.
How does a security camera just skip the most important 5 minutes of the decade?
And this brings us to how that digital evidence was actually managed, which degrades the foundation even further.
Right, the chain of custody.
Exactly. The video was provided by a TPUSA contractor named Carroll Farnsworth. But according to the testimony, this footage wasn't handed over via the original, unedited SD cards from the cameras.
Which is standard procedure.
Yes, but instead it was handed over to investigators via Google Drive links.
Google Drive links. Like, we are collaborating on a neighborhood potluck spreadsheet. Why does that matter so much legally? A video file is a video file, right?
A video file is actually much more than what you see on the screen. It contains metadata, often called EXIF data.
Okay, like a digital fingerprint.
Precisely. It's the fingerprint embedded in the file that proves exactly what camera took the video, the exact time it was recorded, and whether the file has been opened in editing software.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, when you drag a raw video file from an SD card into a cloud service like Google Drive and someone else downloads it, that metadata is often stripped or altered. The creation date might change to the download date.
So without the original SD cards, you lose the cryptographic proof of reality.
This raises an important question about the chain of custody. Without that unbroken chain, a defense attorney can easily argue that those 5 missing minutes weren't a camera malfunction at all.
They could argue the footage was selectively clipped or tampered with before it ever reached the lead investigators.
Exactly. You completely lose the baseline of digital truth.
Okay, so the digital memory of this event is effectively wiped or corrupted. But digital files are fragile, I get that. Physical evidence, the actual dirt, the ballistics, the crime scene, that's supposed to be permanent.
You would think so.
Yet, when we look at how the physical scene was handled, our sources point out that we see the exact same pattern of erasure happening in real life.
The physical environment is arguably handled worse than the digital one. Let's go back to Officer Bagley on the Losi Center roof.
The guy with the dead body can.
That's him. According to his testimony, he was accompanied to that alleged sniper perch by an unidentified man in plain clothes who was wearing a badge and carrying a handgun.
Unidentified.
Bagley admitted he didn't verify the man's agency, he didn't get his name, and he just allowed him onto the freshest, most critical crime scene of the decade.
Who just lets an unidentified armed man wander around an unswept assassination perch? That's insane. But it gets so much worse. Talk about the grassy area below.
Just days after the shooting, before a comprehensive forensic sweep for gunshot residue, explosive residue, or secondary fragmentation could be finalized, the main crime scene, a grassy area, was dug up by heavy excavators.
They dug it up.
Dug it up and paved over it with decorative stones.
I just want to pause on the sheer magnitude of that. They brought in heavy construction machinery to destroy a crime scene. Who ordered that?
That is the most baffling part. The lead investigator for the State Bureau of Investigation testified that he did not authorize the excavation.
Wait, the lead investigator didn't know?
In fact, he stated he only found out his primary crime scene was being paved over from watching the local news.
That is like formatting a hard drive right in front of the IT department and then asking them to run an antivirus scan. It is fundamentally impossible to do your job.
Crime scene preservation is the absolute bedrock of a homicide investigation. By paving over that ground, you invite infinite reasonable doubt.
Because you can never go back and check.
Right. If the defense wants to argue there was a second shooter, or that bullet fragments might have indicated a different trajectory, the prosecution can never go back and check the dirt. The physical ground truth is literally buried under concrete.
And speaking of trajectory, we have to talk about the ballistics, because this is where the state's narrative seems to just completely ignore the laws of physics.
Oh yeah, the ballistics are wild.
First, there's the unfired bullet found on another roof.
Right. On September 10th, investigators found a completely unfired rifle bullet sitting on a separate roof. In court, The state essentially waved this away, claiming a police officer likely just cleared their chamber and left the bullet behind.
Which is crazy.
Mhm.
Our sources cite an ex-Green Beret who trains law enforcement, and he called that excuse completely absurd.
It really is.
You don't just eject live rounds onto civilian rooftops and leave them there like loose change. But, but that isn't even the wildest ballistic claim. Explain the magic bullet to me.
Okay, so the official narrative relies on a .3006 caliber rifle bullet entering Charlie Kirk's neck and simply stopping there without creating an exit wound.
Explain the physics of that to me. I'm not a ballistics expert, but a .306 is a massive round, right?
It is an incredibly powerful cartridge. A standard .3006 round generates over 2,800 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at the muzzle.
Wow.
It was designed for military use and is commonly used to hunt large game like elk or moose.
So it's not a small caliber weapon at all.
Not even close. The sources detailed independent tests firing this specific round into pork roasts, cinder blocks, and even quarter-inch steel plates.
And what happened?
The bullet obliterates almost everything it hits. It punches straight through steel.
So what happens when a projectile carrying that much kinetic energy hits human soft tissue, like a neck?
It creates what is known as hydrostatic shock. Soft tissue cannot absorb 2,800 foot-pounds of energy without violent displacement.
Meaning it should blow right through.
Exactly. The bullet is designed to retain velocity and penetrate deeply. The mathematical and physical probability of a high-velocity .3006 round hitting a human neck, losing all its kinetic energy instantaneously, and just politely stopping without exiting is almost zero.
It defies physics?
Yeah.
So the digital evidence is compromised, the physical crime scene is paved over, and the ballistics require actual magic.
It's a tough case to build.
If the environment is this contradictory, what about the timeline of the suspect himself?
Well, the state's timeline introduces even more structural anomalies. The prosecution's theory relies on Tyler Robinson smuggling a disassembled Mauser rifle onto the university campus.
Okay.
They claim he transported the long, rigid steel rifle barrel by hiding it down the leg of his skinny jeans.
Skinny jeans. A rifle barrel in skinny jeans. And they claim this is visible on camera, right?
They claim this concealed barrel caused a distinct limp captured on the surveillance footage. But the sources highlight a glaring continuity error in the state's own compiled video.
Yes. I love this detail for the sources. I call it Schrödinger's limp.
That's a good way to describe it.
Because the gun seems to exist in whichever pant leg the camera angle requires for the narrative. In one clip, the footage shows the suspect walking with a stiff right leg.
Right.
But in the very next clip, as the suspect is leaving a stairwell, the right leg bends perfectly, and now the left leg is stiff.
Which fundamentally undermines the core mechanical theory of the weapon's transportation. A steel barrel does not bend.
It's rigid metal.
Exactly. If a rigid piece of metal is strapped to your right leg, making it impossible to bend your knee, you cannot suddenly switch the limp to your left leg a few seconds later. It is a physical impossibility.
Just add that to the list of impossibilities. And what about the actual visual identification of the suspect on the roof? With all these cameras, they must have a clear shot of his face.
They don't.
Seriously.
The suspect caught on the roof is completely unidentifiable. The face is entirely hidden. There are no distinct markings or logos on the clothing.
So how did they identify him?
Under cross-examination, the lead investigator could only describe the suspect's build as, quote, not heavy set.
Not heavy set.
That is the state's primary identifying characteristic for a capital murder suspect.
Not heavy set. That narrows it down to roughly 100 million people. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if the suspect on the roof is a ghost, the suspect's car is a neon sign.
This is the Ring camera footage.
Yes. This brings us back to that visceral scene I mentioned at the very beginning of our deep dive. Walk us through that Ring doorbell footage.
So, the state maintains that Tyler Robinson acted alone, a lone gunman who fled the scene and sparked a massive manhunt. However, the sources point to a Ring doorbell camera that captured Tyler Robinson's car being driven in the middle of the night following the shooting.
And it wasn't Tyler Robinson driving.
No. The driver clearly captured on camera was a bald man.
And Tyler Robinson has brown hair.
Correct. Furthermore, the bald driver wasn't alone. He was accompanied by 3 other passengers.
This is what I just cannot wrap my head around. If your entire case hinges on a lone gunman framework, how does the prosecution just breeze past 4 unidentified people joyriding in the prime suspect's vehicle during an active international manhunt?
It doesn't make any sense.
That shatters the lone wolf narrative entirely. It introduces a getaway team or co-conspirators or accessories after the fact. How is that ignored?
It creates a massive narrative vacuum. And what's intriguing is that the confusion and contradictory behavior isn't just coming from the police or the prosecution.
No, it's actually coming from inside the victim's own organization.
The sources pivot sharply here to examine the bizarre public relations strategy of TPUSA surrounding this trial.
Right, because you would expect the victim's organization to be totally unified, demanding justice, and presenting a somber, respectful front.
Absolutely.
But instead you have a PR implosion. Let's talk about Andrew Colvett.
Andrew Colvett, the PR representative for TPUSA, had a highly public meltdown on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
A total crash out.
Yeah. He decided to publicly attack and discredit conservative commentator Candace Owens. In doing so, Colvett claimed that his late boss, Charlie Kirk, and Candace Owens were never actually friends.
Which is a bold claim.
He stated that Charlie only pretended to like her to, quote, manage her.
Which is an insane strategy. He was essentially telling his own audience that his late boss was a chronic liar who faked relationships for clout.
It backfired spectacularly.
Why would a PR rep assassinate his own founder's character unprovoked?
While the strategy collapsed entirely when Candace Owens released the receipts, she published text messages and recent audio recordings of Charlie Kirk that proved the exact opposite of Colvett's claims.
So she proved they were friends.
In his own words, Kirk was actively defending their friendship and sharing behind-the-scenes thoughts with her, demonstrating genuine affection.
So Colvett gets caught in a blatant lie about his deceased boss. And because of this bizarre vocabulary, specifically Colvett's use of the word manage, our sources propose a really provocative intelligence theory.
Yeah, they suggest Charlie Kirk might have been an unwitting asset.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, explain what that means in this context.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources are drawing on standard espionage terminology. They aren't definitively claiming this is a spy thriller, but they are analyzing the power dynamics at play.
Right.
An unwitting asset, or a useful idiot, is someone with influence who genuinely believes they are running their own show and advocating for their own beliefs.
But they actually aren't.
Exactly. Behind the scenes, there is a handler. A handler, which could be someone embedded in their own organization, like a PR rep or an operations manager, is quietly isolating the asset.
They're pulling the strings.
They feed the asset highly specific information, filter their communications, and steer their public actions to serve a completely different agenda that the asset is entirely unaware of.
You know, if you've ever worked in a toxic corporate environment where an aggressive executive assistant or a middle manager acts as the ultimate gatekeeper to the CEO, deciding who gets meetings, filtering what emails the boss sees, and essentially steering the company's direction without the CEO realizing it, you have seen a low-level version of how a handler operates.
Precisely. The asset thinks they hold the leash, but the handler is actually walking the dog.
That's a great analogy.
And by publicly degrading Charlie's character post-mortem and explicitly admitting to managing his relationships, the PR rep accidentally validated this handler theory for outside observers. It makes it look like Charlie Kirk was not in control of his own organization.
And the weirdness doesn't stay on Twitter. It walks right through the courthouse doors.
Oh, the optics at the trial.
The sources note some incredibly bizarre optics from the inner circle attending the trial.
Oh.
You have Charlie's widow, Erica Kirk, reportedly arriving through side doors to completely avoid the public eye.
Which, to be fair, could just be grief.
True, but then you have a TPUSA associate named Stacy Sheridan attending this solemn, high-profile murder trial in what observers described as inappropriate club attire.
The optics are highly relevant because they reflect the internal cohesion of the people closest to the victim.
Which seems to be zero.
Right. When you combine unprovoked PR meltdowns, documented lies about the victim's friendships, handler theories, and erratic courthouse behavior, it creates a fog around the victor's camp that is just as thick and disorienting as the fog surrounding the police investigation.
So let's pull all the way back and look at the sheer weight of what we've covered today. The prosecution promised a mountain of evidence. But when you look at the bedrock, what do you actually find?
A lot of missing pieces.
You find a body camera that miraculously dies exactly when critical evidence is discovered. A primary crime scene that is dug up and paved over before the lead investigator even knows about it.
A magic .3006 bullet that somehow defies the foundational laws of hydrostatic shock.
A suspect whose physical limp switches legs on camera. A bald getaway driver completely ignored in a lone gunman case. and a PR team imploding its own founder's legacy with easily disprovable lies.
It is a profound, multi-layered breakdown of the standard evidentiary process.
And it's all happening in real time.
And remember, because of Utah's Rule 1102 and the low bar of a preliminary hearing, the state can present this fragile narrative using reliable hearsay without subjecting the original witnesses to cross-examination.
It's honestly disturbing.
The sheer volume of these structural anomalies raises deeply unsettling questions about how evidence is gathered, preserved, and presented in modern courtrooms.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We live in an era absolutely flooded with information. We live in a time where bot traffic and algorithmic echo chambers can artificially inflate a narrative until it looks exactly like the consensus truth.
Which is why we have to be careful.
This case highlights why relentless critical thinking is essential. We cannot blindly trust the initial promise of a mountain of evidence without inspecting the underlying rocks.
Because sometimes the rocks aren't real.
Because sometimes, when you look closely at the physics and the metadata, you realize that granite is actually just painted sand.
It demands that we interrogate the systems that present us with facts, even when, or especially when, the official narrative insists the case is entirely closed.
And that leaves us with one final, lingering thought to explore on your own. If a high-profile, massively funded modern investigation can rely on missing digital files, Google Drive links that strip metadata, and inexplicable 5-minute jumps in surveillance footage, how do we establish a true baseline of reality in the digital age?
That is the big question.
If seeing is no longer believing, how will our justice system adapt when anyone can rightfully claim that the pixels themselves have been manipulated? It's a muddy landscape out there, and the tools we use to find the truth might be the very things obscuring it.
Until next time, keep digging.